Good afternoon and welcome to IBA News this Monday, the 10th of October. I'm Elon Aslan-Levy, joining you live from Jerusalem. Thousands of police, border police and volunteers have been deployed in and around the capital to safeguard citizens ahead of Slichot prayers tonight and Yom Kippur, in order to facilitate the entry of tens of thousands of Jews expected to arrive at the Western Wall tonight. Access roads leading to the Old City will be sealed to traffic. Police advise the public to park their cars in nearby public car parks. In addition, police will set up roadblocks at roads leading into Jerusalem as well as inside the city to prevent vehicles from East Jerusalem entering the western part of the capital. Security forces will also be deployed in neighborhoods in East Jerusalem in order to quell any attempts to disturb the peace and crack down on any riots and stone-throwing incidents. The heightened police presence also comes in the wake of yesterday's terror attack, which claimed the lives of 2 Israelis. Details of the ongoing investigation into the fatal shooting remain under a court-imposed gag order, but Margot Dudkevich has this report.
The IDF last night mapped out the home of the 39-year-old terrorist who murdered police officer Yosef Kilmer and grandmother Levana Malichi in yesterday's shooting attack in the capital. Once the go-ahead is received from the government echelon, security forces will destroy the building. During the operation, a soldier was lightly injured when a pipe bomb was thrown at troops after violent clashes erupted, with Palestinians throwing pipe bombs, rocks and firebombs at security forces. Also last night in the West Bank town of Azun, security forces arrested Palestinian terror suspects and shut down a weapons workshop and seized weapons. Early yesterday evening, thousands attended the funerals of the 2 Israeli victims. At the police section at Mount Herzl Cemetery, Kilmer's wife, Noy, with tears streaming down her face, promised to continue loving her husband until her death. The 2 married just 6 months ago. Kilmer, who was decorated in the past for thwarting a terror attack, is survived by his wife, parents and 2 brothers. A short time later at the Givat Shaul cemetery in Jerusalem, 60-year-old Levana Malichi was laid to rest. Malichi worked in the Knesset for 30 years and is survived by her husband, 3 daughters and 6 grandchildren. 6 other Israelis were injured in yesterday's attack that occurred in the midst of a heightened security presence in Jerusalem ahead of the upcoming Yom Kippur and Sukkot holidays. This morning, doctors said 2 of the wounded Israelis still remain in hospital. The 39-year-old Palestinian terrorist was the holder of an Israeli identity card and took advantage of the freedom of movement to perpetrate yesterday's bloody attack. While his name is barred from publication, as well as details pertaining to the police investigation, security officials will need to determine how he obtained the M16 rifle used in the attack and why he was allowed to roam freely despite having been jailed in Israel for security offences in the past. He was also very active on Facebook, posting messages inciting to terror. Yesterday, he was to have started serving a 4-month jail sentence for attacking a policeman. Instead, he opted to murder Israelis. The terrorist left behind a videotaped message in which he said his decision to launch the attack was to safeguard Al-Aqsa and liberate Jerusalem from the Jews' contamination. Hamas lauded his actions, and even Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah movement hailed the terrorist a martyr. On separate postings on the official Fatah Facebook page, the terrorist was praised and a day of mourning was declared as well as a general strike. Last night outside the terrorist's home, a crowd gathered rejoicing the death of Israelis, handing out sweets to mark the moment. Even his family joined in the celebration, and his young daughter posted a video clip where she expressed her joy and pride in her father becoming a martyr. It is unclear whether the terrorist, a known Hamas sympathizer, was recruited by the terrorist organization to carry out the attack, or whether he acted independently. Time will tell whether his actions signal the start of a new upsurge in violence and a sign that the relative calm that prevailed has come to an end. Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
The US State Department condemned the attack, saying there is no justification for taking the lives of innocents, while the European Union mission in Israel said the attack illustrates once more the urgent need to bring new impetus to the peace process. The family of Lieutenant Hadar Goldin, who was killed in Operation Protective Edge in 2014 in Gaza and whose body is still held by Hamas there, has called on the government not to return the body of the 39-year-old terrorist who perpetrated yesterday's attack. In a statement, the Goldins noted that the terrorist family has described him as someone who had expressed allegiance to Mohammed Deif, the leader of Hamas's military wing, which continues to hold the remains of Hadar as well as those of Oron Shaul, also killed in action in the same war. The family stress that the continued exertion of pressure is the only tactic that will secure the return of Hadar and Oron's bodies. Security forces safeguarded the entry of some 1,200 Jews to pray at Joseph's tomb in Nablus overnight. The worshippers arrived at the holy site in 24 buses under a heavy security escort. During the visit, violent clashes between soldiers and Palestinians erupted in different parts of the West Bank city. Soldiers used rubber bullets and tear gas to disperse the mob, while the visit of the worshippers itself passed without further incident. Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan insists the latest wave of terror attacks is the product of incitement on the internet. Well, joining us from our Tel Aviv studio is Golan Barhum, an expert on Arab media and founder of the Kedem Forum for Public Diplomacy. Mr. Barhum, welcome.
Well, first of all, good evening.
Without violating the gag order on the identity of yesterday's attacker, what do we know specifically about the influence of online incitement in yesterday's attack?
Well, let me start by saying that far away, not just I'm personally, not just analyze the situation, I'm personally, specifically, I'm having a lots of debates, direct debates with an Arab, in Arabic media. And what I heard is that there is a lot of influence in Arabic from the religious point of view, what we are actually seeing
specifically
is that
with relation to yesterday's attacker.
I'm sorry?
Specifically regarding yesterday's attacker.
Specifically regard to what happened yesterday, and generally the religious part is very important if we're talking about acts of violence. We're talking about incite against Jews, not just against the Zionist Jews, but against Jews, against the existence of the state of Israel, and the fact that the presence of Jews, any Jews, not just settlers, well, actually everyone considered them as settlers, and we hear it officially in Arabic. I just want to point out, in addition to this, hello?
Please.
Hello?
Yes, more generally, this story of incitement has been with us for a while, and of course in the recent wave of violence, but in what ways has the nature or scope of this online incitement changed over the last year? How have we seen it evolving?
Well, you know, during the 80s, the 90s, it was far away, just in the mosques. Today we see it in social media, but I just want to point out once again that the incident today is actually officially, it's came and led by the Palestinian Authority. It's not something, you know, the act itself was made by one person, only one person, perhaps. But if you see all over, there is an insight which is officially, I'm talking about schools, I'm talking about television, I'm talking about radio, I'm talking about everything,
but Mr. Barhum, specifically, we've heard a lot about incitement over the last year since the Lone Wolf Intifada, if we can call it that, erupted last year. Since it erupted last year, can we see any changes in the way that incitement has changed? Are we seeing the same messages, or are there any subtle shifts in the messaging?
Well, as I mentioned before, the insight is specifically against Jews. They are using the Jewish holiday, the Jewish days, the Jewish holidays, in order to increase the insight against Jews. You know, if we're talking about terror and insight and terror, it goes ups and down. So I cannot tell you it's in the same, always in the same level, but using the holy things, the holy symbols against Jews and against the presence of Jews, this is all over. And I fully support the Minister Ardan, because if you want to win against the acts of terror, you cannot head someone.
Mr. Barham, on that specifically of government measures against online incitement, there's cross-party support now for forcing internet providers to remove incitement material immediately from their sites. How much responsibility can we really ask organizations like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter to assume?
Make no mistake about it. If we are going to reduce the incite, specifically in social media, I'm not going to assure you that we are going to reach to 100% of success. We are far away from it. But we must do acts in order to prevent it. I believe that the acts itself goes together with the incite, all over together. So I think that measures in order to prevent the terror, we're not going to see a full 100% results, but we're going to see something less. We're going to see less acts of terror. I believe that it will be less effective, not just if we are just going to destroy houses or to arrest people. We have to do it.
Mr.
Make
Barham,
no mistake about it. But in addition to this,
Mr. Barham,
fighting against terror,
briefly, because we have to wrap up. Just 2 days before he was set to carry out his jail sentence, yesterday's terrorist wrote on Facebook about his love for Al-Aqsa. What has happened in the social media discourse on Al-Aqsa specifically? Because we've seen a months-long lull in attacks.
Well, we're talking about, as I mentioned, as I already told you, we're talking about the existence of Jews in Al-Aqsa and close to Dome of the Rock, which is a problem. We're talking that the Jews want to eliminate, to burn Jerusalem. The fact that we are saying something else, the fact that we are acting on the opposite, the fact that we're trying to explain our acts in the name of the Israeli government, it's not effective. It's less effective, unfortunately. You have to understand that all this insight regard to Jerusalem is very, very, very intensive. This is why it's, unfortunately, effectively, when we see it in the street and what happened yesterday.
Well, we'll be praying there won't be an escalation over the rest of the High Holy Days. Mr. Barham, thank you very much.
Thank you.
In the United States last night, Republican nominee Donald Trump threatened to send Democratic rival Hillary Clinton to prison in the second of 3 presidential debates. A CNN poll found 57% of respondents felt Secretary Clinton won compared to 34% for Trump, while YouGov had Clinton winning by only 5 percentage points. The town hall debate began without the traditional handshake and only became more bitter and unpleasant. Mr. Trump accused his rival of being the devil and harboring tremendous hate in her heart, and threatened to send her to prison if elected president over her email scandal.
If I win, I am going to instruct my Attorney General to get a special prosecutor to look into your situation, because there has never been so many lies, so much deception. There has never been anything like it.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yeah, because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Mr. Trump dismissed his own boasts of sexual assault caught on hot mic as locker room talk and sought to deflect attention onto ISIS.
You bragged that you have sexually assaulted women. Do you understand that?
No, I didn't say that at all. I don't think you understood what was said. This was locker room talk. I'm not proud of it. I apologize to my family. I apologize to the American people. Certainly I'm not proud of it. But this is locker room talk. You know, when we have a world where you have ISIS chopping off heads, where you have, and frankly, drowning people in steel cages.
He also accused Hillary Clinton of smearing women who had accused her husband of sexual harassment, the same women he invited to sit in the audience. But Secretary Clinton used the groping scandal to hammer her opponent.
What we all saw and heard on Friday was Donald talking about women, what he thinks about women, what he does to women. And he has said that the video doesn't represent who he is. But I think it's clear to anyone who heard it that it represents exactly who he is.
And get off this question.
Okay, Donald, I know you're into big diversion tonight, anything to avoid talking about your campaign and the way it's exploding and the way Republicans are leaving you. But
Let's
let's
see
at
what
least
happens
focus
Allow her to
on some of
respond.
the
Let's see what
issues
happens.
that people care about tonight.
Many viewers also observed Mr. Trump's unusual behavior, frequently standing directly behind Clinton. The candidates also sparred on policy on the sidelines of the assaults on each other's integrity. Secretary Clinton promised that nobody earning less than $250,000 would pay more tax, but the very rich would. She would not advocate the use of ground forces in Syria, but said Washington should arm the Kurds. For his part, Mr. Trump praised Iran, Russia and the Assad regime for killing ISIS, a claim most observers dispute, and said his Muslim ban had morphed into extreme vetting. In the end, both candidates, when prompted, found nice words to say about each other.
Look, I respect his children. His children are incredibly able and devoted, and I think that says a lot about Donald.
She's a fighter. I disagree with much of what she's fighting for. I do disagree with her judgment in many cases. But she does fight hard, and she doesn't quit, and she doesn't give up, and I consider that to be a very good trait.
But these platitudes could not remove the bitter taste from an unprecedentedly ugly campaign season, which still has a month of life left in it and one more debate to go. Joint List Knesset members Hanin Zawabi and Jamal Zahalka were questioned today at the police Lahav 433 headquarters in connection to the ongoing corruption investigation concerning the Joint List. Dozens of protesters gathered outside the police headquarters to show their solidarity with the two legislators and express outrage regarding the police probe. Last month, police arrested more than 20 people, including officials from the Balad party, on suspicions of fraudulent transfer of funds to the tune of millions of shekels to the party's treasury. The first group of Falashmora, Ethiopians who claim Jewish heritage, landed at the Ben Gurion airport last night as part of a government plan to bring members of the community to Israel. In April, the government approved the immigration of some 9,000 Ethiopians by the end of 2020. The move is partly funded by the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem. Immigration and Absorption Minister Sofa Landver greeted Israel's later citizens at the airport. The plan initially called for the absorption of 1,300 Falashmora by this past month of June, but owing to a series of delays, the first group of 64 immigrants arrived only last night.
Israel has a big experience of bringing almost 100,000 Jews and their relatives from Ethiopia in the last 40 years. And in fact, now we are on the final stages of reunification of the families, the last parts of the families which left. And of course the situation in Ethiopia, which is with a lot of violence and wars and so, is very unstable.
Welcome home. The carnage on the nation's roads shows no sign of abating. 2 people were killed and 4 others injured last night in a fatal car crash along Highway 1 between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. 3 of the people involved had apparently stepped out of their vehicle, which had broken down on the side of the busy motorway near the Latrun junction, when another car carrying 3 passengers crashed into them. One of the passengers waiting outside, 20-year-old Aviad Elimelech of Ashdod, was killed on the spot. Another 28-year-old woman who is seriously injured succumbed to her wounds today. An investigation into the accident has been launched. Now to an app that can save one's life. Magen David Adom has recently launched a new app to streamline summoning an ambulance on one's smartphone. The app provides the dispatcher with the caller's personal information, address and location, and lets one live chat with a first responder in a variety of languages, including English, Russian, French, Arabic and Amharic. The application allows people to preload vital information, such as medical history, allergies to medicines, foods, and, more significantly, saving time in a real emergency. It automatically connects non-Hebrew speakers with the dispatcher who speaks their language, and enables the writing of text messages in one's native language, which it simultaneously translates to the dispatcher. That's My Mada on the App Store. In finance, the shekel is mixed today, and the stock exchange is up. Turning to weather, the skies will be cleared of aeroplanes tomorrow night for Yom Kippur, but it will still be partly cloudy. Temperatures will remain stable tomorrow and are expected to rise to unseasonable heights on Wednesday on Yom Kippur. And that's all for today. There will be no IBA news tomorrow or Wednesday owing to Yom Kippur, which begins tomorrow at sundown. We'll be back on Thursday at our regular time of 4 o'clock. We leave you now with a sublime musical rendition of Slichot at Jerusalem's Yeshurun Synagogue with cantor Itzhak Meir, Gemar Chatima Tova, and well over the fast.
צעקנו בפינו חטאנו, בתרתור ועיקש ליבנו, עליון רחמך מעולם, סליחה עמך היא, נחמה לרע, מתקן אף חסד, לא תתעלם בעיתות כאל. אנחנו יפדם עיני הכל, טובך וחסדך עמנו, הטוב בשטן ואל יסתיר עלינו, זעום בו ביתו, ועמוד בין לצדוק לצדקנו,